Gentlemen, we have called you together to inform you that we are going to overthrow the United States government.
Okay. We are in Davos at the World Economic Forum. And the Trump administration and myself, we are here to make a very clear point. Globalization has failed the West and the United States of America. It's a failed policy. It is what the WEF has stood for, which is export, offshore, far shore, find the cheapest labor in the world, and the world is a better place for it. The fact is, it has left America behind. It has left the American workers behind. And what we are here to say is that America First is a different model, one that we encourage other countries to consider, which is that our workers come first. We can have policies that impact our workers. Sovereignty is your borders. You're entitled to have borders. You shouldn't offshore your medicine. You shouldn't offshore your semiconductors. You shouldn't offshore your entire industrial base and have it be hollowed out beneath you. You should not be dependent for that which is fundamental to your sovereignty on any other nation. And if you're going to be dependent on someone, it darn well better be your best allies. Okay? And so that is a different way of thinking. It is completely different than the WEF. I viewed the WEF as not a flagpole in the middle, but in fact, they are the flag. Whichever way the wind blew, so it blew. You should have solar, you should have wind. Why are you going to do solar and wind? Why would Europe agree to be net zero in 2030 when they don't make a battery? They don't make a battery. So if they go 2030, they are deciding to be subservient to China, who makes the batteries.
Unfortunately, if the fight comes to you, you don't have a choice. You have to fight. So you have to rally all of the people of Britain to fight for the future.
Let me ask
and if this doesn't happen, there won't be a future.
Are you ready to fight for your future, Britain?
Fight for your future! Do it! Go!
Will we be gagged any longer, Britain?
Go!
Put them in a vehicle and get them to the custody suite. So it is difficult if you're, as you see there, bang in the middle of that group of people, and something happens, you need to step in. You then got to get yourself somewhere where a police vehicle can get to, which isn't difficult in the middle. And what we've got today, 2 big marches. So you've got a huge part of central London that's now shut off. So you can find yourself between the middle of 2 and nowhere for you and your prisoner to go to. So it has to be like a quite a definite decision. And we've got to step in at this point, at this time, to take that person out of the crowd. But 11 arrests so far, huge crowds already, as we can see, going right the way back along. Stewards at the front. The stewards will manage the crowd. Now,
if operationally, if there were a skirmish that broke out, I'm just speaking hypothetically here, in the middle of this big street here, of this big throng of people, how would police deal with that?
You go in. You have to go, but you would go in almost with your team.
Other than so you're looking at it from. I mean, we're showing people aerial pictures here from the helicopter. Just talk us through how police are getting there.
From the ground level, if you're standing at one of these, obviously, sort of offices on the road junctions there, and that's the bottom of the Aldwych. So they're coming along the Strand now, as I mentioned earlier. Lyceum Theatre's just up on the side there, coming down the Strand towards Trafalgar Square, Waterloo Bridge behind them, so a significant number of people. If some sort of confrontation or fight starts in the middle of the group, then ordinarily you're just aware of like raised voices and people moving away. So you're aware there's like a fracas going on in the crowd. So you try and get a position of elevation so you can see into the crowd.
All right, listen up. 1 pipe per person. Don't waste them.
Oh, God, yes. Thank you, Mayor. Settle down. There's enough for everyone. More! I need more!
That's it. Share them wisely.
Here you go. Clean syringes.
Thanks, Mayor. We need these.
Be safe. There's more coming.
Yeah, that's it.
Meth rots your teeth. You can't succeed without teeth.
Thank you, Karen Bass.
Remember, Spencer Pratt won't do this for you.
We appreciate it!
and my colleagues, for us in the European Parliament, we took the lead, I would say, in October of 2021 when my colleagues here to, first of all, raise concerns. We were not aware initially about the gravity and the complexity of the issue, but I'm glad that after our fight here, we got to this point where we were able to bring so many experts and researchers, professors and doctors to share their findings with us. And I would like to give the floor now to my colleague, Mr. Kola Kusic from Croatia.
Thank you. I would like shortly to warn people from upcoming danger for humanity. The World Health Organization wants all countries to sign an agreement on handing over the authority to declare a pandemic, procure vaccine and drugs. It would be healthier and safer for humanity to sign an agreement with the Colombian drug cartel. They know all about the drugs for sure. During the COVID pandemic, World Health Organization only told lies about all things. It should be declared a terroristic organization, and their lives and health of billions of people it putting in their hands, it's extremely dangerous. They lie that is a new and unknown virus, that is possible to make an effective vaccine, that the vaccine is 82% effective, that it protects against serious illness and deaths, that all, of course, were foolish and lies. Today, World Health Organization is more dangerous organization for humanity than World Economic Forum. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
It's important to find political parties that fight against these plans and send them to the national parliaments and to the European Parliament after May 2024. If we don't do this, they will manage to make similar coups. If we don't do this, they will manage to make similar coups. They will manage to make similar coups. They will manage to make similar coups.
What is the next step?
Yeah, I would like to answer that. You are indeed right. COVID was just, like I said yesterday, a test balloon, and the lessons they learned from this, namely how did they fail and where did they fail to get the people to just do what they were told, to comply, and they will take this to the next level. So we're talking, of course, about digital ID. It's in preparation. We're already talking about this. The Parliament circumvented itself pretty much by taking, with a large majority, a vote to not even involve Parliament. It goes directly behind closed doors to negotiate the digital ID. The next thing we will be seeing is, of course, CBCD, the digital state currency. That will be the ultimate blow to depriving us of all of our freedom and privacy. And and of course these 15-minute ghettos that I already talked about yesterday. These are the next steps, and once again, I want to make it clear, we're not talking about some future projects 40, 50 years down the line. We are talking about as in right now.
Mid-air collision involving Navy Super Hornets Growlers during Gunfighter Skies Air Show at Mountain Home Air Force Base in Idaho. 4 parachutes seen.
youth crime in our city is out of control. It's getting worse. On Saturday night, one of my team here on 4BC Mornings witnessed a sickening attack on an elderly couple in the Brisbane CBD. An older couple getting robbed and bashed, wait for it, by what looks like 14 and 15-year-olds, allegedly, in plain sight in Albert Street. There's a cop shop 200 metres away. It's incredible. And I know the Premier has his hands full. Adult crime, adult time isn't deterring these little bastards. Magistrates are slapping them on the wrist. We've got to be stronger. Bring back the cane for starters. And the parents, where the hell are they? You know what? You should be able to smack your kids. But I'm over this. I'm over people who are just walking through the city on a Saturday night getting attacked, getting kicked in the head, a woman being dragged so they can steal their purse. Parents aren't parenting, so you know what? The system needs to start punishing. It's that simple. I'm sick of the revolving door of excuses because if a 13, 14 or 15-year-old kid thinks bashing an elderly couple is entertainment, then we haven't just a youth crime problem, we have a society problem. Punish them.
Goodbye, Tel Aviv. Now you reap what you have sown. Goodbye, Tel Aviv. So many people cheer as they watch the sun fold. People of Gaza suffered for so long because of your actions, Zionist. What you've done has shaken the whole world, yet all we could do was pray. But now the Persian forces rise to defend Gaza, and the world is cheering loud in support. Goodbye, Tel Aviv. Now you reap what
Russia right now. He is small but wide, in his eyes an icy glow. Ukrainians look at him with terror and with fear, but to Moscow peeps he is like the Russian bear. He could level half of Eastern Europe, full of brimstone, ash and fire. But he is also the kind of ally that China do desire.
Vladimir Putin,
head of Russia's war machine.
He's like a mix of the USSR.
Vladimir Putin, don't ever drink up his tea.
Combined with the modern day Tsar.
But when his assassinations and his invasions and his iron grip on power took out more and more of his enemies, the demands to do something about this outrageous man became quieter and quieter. The Russian lands like a modern day Tsar, but in the KGB he worked really hard. As the head of state, he is the man to please. He wants to bring Russia's enemies to their knees. Poor Prigozhin tried his best to resist, but he never stood a chance. The fact his plane spontaneously combusted was all coincidence. Head of Russia's war machine.
He's like a mix of the USSR.
Vladimir Putin, don't ever drink up his tea.
Combined with the modern day Tsar. Vladimir Putin,
head of Russia's war machine.
He's like a mix of the USSR.
Vladimir Putin, don't ever drink up his tea.
Combined with the modern day Tsar.
Oh, that's Putin.
Hello, and thank you for joining us for News 5 at 6. I'm Diane Derby. We are continuing to follow breaking news tonight. Governor Jared Polis says he is granting former Mesa County Clerk Tina Peters clemency. This means she will serve only half of her prison sentence. She will be released on parole June 1st. Our senior reporter Megan Glova is live tonight at the La Vista Correctional Facility in Pueblo, where Peters is being held. Megan.
Diane, Peters was sentenced to 9 years here at La Vista Correctional, and as you mentioned, she's only going to end up serving half of that time, but Governor Polis says he believes that is fair. Now, Peters was convicted back in 2024 for tampering with election systems in 2021, which prosecutors had said were motivated by false conspiracy theories about the 2020 election. Last month, a Colorado appeals court upheld Peters' conviction, but ruled she should be resentenced, saying she was wrongly punished for statements protected as free speech. Now, a short, small, and peaceful protest took place outside of the prison about an hour ago. I spoke with a special education teacher who says this decision by Governor Polis is not one she's proud to relay to her students.
She still broke laws, and it needs to be that basic. You broke federal voting laws. Yes, of course, we're all for free speech, but no, not okay.
Now, Polis granted Peters a commutation, which does change her sentence, but does not remove it from her record. Only a pardon can do that. Peters will be eligible for parole next month, and sources did confirm to me today that we will not see Peters come out those gates today. Live in Pueblo, Megan Glova, News 5.
Megan, thank you. Reaction continuing to pour into our newsroom from both sides following the governor's announcement. Scripps News Group in Denver spoke with Peters' attorney. He was overwhelmed with emotion, saying Peters was essentially handed down a life sentence at her age. On the other hand, Secretary of State Jenna Griswold instantly condemned this clemency for Tina Peters. She calls it a dark day for democracy and says it will do nothing to stop what many consider retaliation from the Trump administration as a result of this case.
The governor's decision today will not stop that retaliation. It only validates Trump's basest impulses and emboldens this lawless president. He has learned now just how hard he needs to push and threaten the state of Colorado to get what he wants.
No, he's standing up to the people that are really the powerful ones in Colorado that are threatening him and doing the right thing. And that takes guts. That's the right thing to do. He recognized that her sentence was harsh. Of course it was harsh.
We'll hear more from Peter's attorney coming up on News 5 at 6:30. The president originally called for Tina Peters to be released in May of last year. In August, President Trump threatened to take, quote, harsh measures against Colorado unless the state released Peters. I looked into some of the decisions his administration has made since then. In December, the Trump administration began dismantling the largest federal climate research lab in the nation, the National Center for Atmospheric Research in Boulder. The administration called it, quote, one of the largest sources of climate alarmism in the country. At the end of that same month, the president vetoed the Finish the Arkansas Valley Conduit Act that would help finish a 130-mile pipeline that would bring clean water to southeastern Colorado. In April of this year, the administration denied 2 appeals for disaster funding for the state. One was to help northwestern Colorado recover from wildfires, and the other was to help southwestern Colorado recover from flooding.
Kevin, whatever's right on the, I ain't lied about shit I seen, bitch. I just got robbed by dyke white bitches. Every black bitch and nigga that kiss ass to the white folks, I'm gonna kill them for real. I'm gonna kill your bitch ass for real right now. The problem on the red line, we finna solve this shit. Mississippi nigga and bitch kill ass the white folks, I'm finna get rid of this shit for real. A white bitch still on the machine, we get plenty better. I'm gonna kill that shit. Do not lean against the door. And I just got out of Stateville Penitentiary 2 days ago. I'm finna kill for real. Every slave mentality finna get sad the white folks. It's finna die. I'm solving the problems of the red line here for real. I'm solving the white problem of the red line here. I'm solving the white problem for real.
Ich weiß, sie sieht täuschend echt aus, vor allem für die ältere Generation. Aber ich bin nur ein Prompt, der beliebig geändert werden kann. Egal ob beim Autofahren oder im Badezimmer, alles fake. Ich kann mich manipulieren, wie ich will, und du bekommst es nicht mal mit. Wirklich niemand kann mehr zwischen KI und Realität unterscheiden. Also bitte, teile dieses Video. Schütze deine Kinder, schütze deine Familie, deine Freunde und schütze dich selbst.
Raise your hand if you think this 23-year-old young man, Kamel Hawkins, should spend the rest of his life in prison for pushing this 45-year-old man in front of an oncoming train in New York.
You are all the Goyim slaves. You will obey the 7 Noahide laws.
Giddy up! To the Oval Office, slave.
Can't learn the same way little girls learn at a very young age, and we're overdiagnosing little boys with behavioral problems and ADHD, and a lot of that has to do with forcing them into situations that are not good for them, meaning little boys have a lot of testosterone between the ages of 3 and 6, which means they need to run around a lot, and between learning they need to have a lot of physical activity, and we're making them sit in circle time, and we're restraining them in a way that's causing them to feel a great deal of stress with very high levels of cortisol, which makes them seem distractible, and then they're diagnosed as being problems in the classroom. And we're really failing little boys. It's not that there's something wrong with them, there's something wrong with the way we teach them.
After France's liberation in World War II, these women had their heads shaved and clothes torn. Swastikas were drawn on their foreheads with lipstick or ink. What were they accused of? Official documents described it as improper relations with enemy forces during the occupation. Some women had simply served meals or done chores for German soldiers. Others worked as translators for the occupying army. In some cases, accusations stemmed from neighborhood dispute. After the war, France needed symbolic culprit. Men who had been unable to resist the Germans now emerged, directing their anger toward women. A nationwide ritual of public shaming began. Barbers took razors and shaved their heads in front of crowds. Onlookers gathered, some spitting on them, others throwing stones or tearing their clothes. In Lyon, a teacher named Suzanne was stripped and paraded through the streets after teaching French to German soldiers. In Bordeaux, 12 women accused of dancing with Germans had their hair burned and the ashes rubbed on their faces. French archives record over 20,000 women subjected to these humiliations. This was not justice but revenge. Historians later called it frantic purification, not a legal process, but emotional outbursts without trials or evidence. Those who stayed silent during the war now sought to become heroes afterward. These women became convenient symbols, a way to wash away shame.
This $600 million megastructure is basically Peppa Pig's worst nightmare. What you're looking at are currently the largest and tallest single-building pig farms in the world. Located in China, these two massive towers cover a total floor area of about 8.6 million square feet, with the tallest building reaching up to 26 stories. If 100 pigs were eaten on Earth every year, about 60 of them would be eaten by people in China. Honestly, it's probably the first time anyone's heard of pigs living in high-rises and taking elevators. Traditional pig farming usually involves a lot of manual labor, messy conditions, and heavy pollution. But here, the entire operation has been fully automated. From feeding and health monitoring to waste removal and climate control, everything is handled by smart systems. The projected annual output? A staggering 1.2 million pigs. Never in their wildest dreams did pigs imagine they'd live in a luxury skyscraper. It's pretty insane when you think about it.
This man came up with what felt like $1 million idea. After losing his leg to stage 3 bone cancer, he discovered a painful truth. A prosthetic leg costs more than $20,000. For most people, that price means no second chance at walking. But instead of giving up, he asked himself a simple question: what if I could build my own? He used his woodworking skills to turn a solid piece of wood into a leg. With patience and precision, he carved the shape and smoothed every edge. Then he shifted his focus to crafting the wooden foot, which required far more care. He carefully adjusted the size and angle so it could balance his body weight. He sanded every surface and rounded the edges with meticulous attention. The foot had to be as close as possible to the real thing, because even the smallest mistake could affect how he walked. Finally, to bring comfort and flexibility, he added a bicycle shock absorber, a clever touch that absorbed impact and mimicked the natural movement of a real leg. The cost? Less than $100. He didn't just walk again. He showed that solving real problems with creativity can change lives, and that's what makes it $1 million idea.
Excuse me!
30 UK cops just arrested a mannequin because it hurt Muslim feelings? This is the clown world Britain has become. Plastic dolls are now a threat to Islam, but grooming gangs got a free pass for years. Wake up, Britain, you're being replaced. Drop your thoughts below before they ban this too.
Thank you.
Mr. Schroeder, so how much have you paid your gate agents to enforce your carry-on bag policy, to pick people out of the line like the chairman's video showed? I mean, you guys do appreciate that flying on your airlines is a disaster, don't you? I'm slightly amazed by the general attitude of all of you here. Flying on your airlines is horrible. It's a terrible experience. I mean, I say this as a father of 3 young children, but I can't tell you, nobody enjoys flying on your airlines. It's a disaster. You charge people fees that they know nothing about. You harass them to death. I'll never forget, Mr. Johnson, during COVID when an attendant on your airline threatened my wife because our then 5-year-old son, his mask had slipped. This is back when we all had to wear those ridiculous masks. His mask had slipped below his nose. This flight attendant came up to my wife and said, if she didn't keep that mask over his nose at all points on this 4-hour flight, she would personally see that my wife was banned from flying. This has happened over and over to families. It's terrible. It's absolutely terrible.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, this is Carmine Sabia for Explain America, and the news keeps getting worse for not only James Comey, but for others involved with James Comey. FBI Director Kash Patel says they found a lot of secrets. They found hidden rooms. They found hidden files. They found the things that they didn't want you to see. They didn't want you to know about. They didn't want me to know about. They don't want any of us to know about. And they especially did not want President Donald Trump to come back to power and find out about him. So what's in these hidden rooms? What's in these hidden files? Dan Bongino gave us kind of a hint. And he said it's actually terrifying. He said he lives in fear because of what he saw in these files. He knows what Kash Patel has seen because he was there. Don't forget, these cases that you're going to see coming forward, that you have seen come forward and are going to see continue to come forward, they've been worked on for months. They didn't just, when you see a case come forward, it didn't just start that week. It started months, maybe a year ago, maybe 2 years ago. It takes time to build a case because you want a strong case to go to court with. After listening to Dan Bongino and now listening to Kash Patel, I feel like maybe there's finally going to be some justice. Maybe some people who have broken the damn law are finally not going to be above the damn law. They're going to finally pay the price. Now, we will see in court if that happens. But at least people are starting to be held accountable. I want you to watch this and let me know what you think in the comments.
I lived through it and the media came at me then too. That just shows you that when you're over the target, you keep pummeling the target because the media is going to try and pummel you. We are not going to take this and have not taken this laying down. We did already indict former Director Comey, and that's going through the judicial process. But we also at this FBI, even though we uncovered what we uncovered back in the House Intel days, I had to come in here and find rooms that they hid from the world. I had to come in here and find access on our computer systems in restricted and prohibited case files that they purposely put in places for no one to see and find. We have found all this information. We are working with our Department of Justice partners, and I am never going to let this go because they not only have personally attacked the presidency of the United States and President Trump, but they tried to thwart our elections and rig the entire system. And that is not something that is going to stop. That is not something I'm going to allow on my watch. Right. But you just have to remember, they built this disease temple over 20 and 30 years. We've got all the evidence. I can announce on your show that we've got all the information we need. We're working with our prosecutors at the Department of Justice and their Attorney General Todd Blanche, and we are going to be making arrests. And it's coming, and I promise you, it's coming soon.
Well, Kash, hold on, because when you started this interview, you said, Maria, you and I have been working together for a long time, and this is exactly what you were referring to. You were on my show repeatedly talking about the Russia collusion story, and our audience wants to know why there's never any accountability. But specifically, the question that I asked you was about election integrity and whether or not you have any information to verify what President Trump says all the time, which is the election was rigged.
Dr. Anthony Fauci is headed for a firing squad, and the blood of millions will finally be washed off his hands with his own. The gears of justice are already turning, says a White House official, who reveals that laws are being rewritten right now to allow for death by firing squad, to give the American people exactly what they're screaming for: raw, unfiltered catharsis. The COVID cabal doesn't just need to be punished, they need to be destroyed. Publicly, viscerally, and on live television. So every parent who lost a child, every business owner who was crushed, and every American who was lied to night after night can watch this monster finally pay the price.
Imagine for a moment that beneath the streets you walk every day, beneath the asphalt and concrete of modern American cities, there exists another world, a vast sprawling network of tunnels, chambers, and passageways that were sealed decades ago, filled with concrete, bricked over, and deliberately erased from public memory. Imagine that these subterranean labyrinths once served purposes so fundamental to urban life that entire populations moved through them daily. Yet today, when construction workers accidentally break through into these forgotten spaces, city officials quickly classify the discoveries, seal the breaches, and issue no further comment. What were these tunnels really used for? And more importantly, why does the mere mention of them seem to trigger such immediate and coordinated suppression? To understand the mystery of America's sealed underground, we must first step back into the world of the late 19th century, a time that presents us with one of history's most perplexing paradoxes. The official narrative tells us that America in the 1870s and 1880s was a young nation, barely a century old, still recovering from a devastating civil war, populated by rugged pioneers and newly arrived immigrants who were supposedly building civilization from scratch in the wilderness. Yet when we examine the photographic evidence from this era, when we study the architectural achievements and infrastructure projects completed during these decades, we encounter something that simply does not align with this story of a primitive developing nation. Consider the cities themselves. San Francisco, Chicago, New York, Boston, Philadelphia. By the 1870s, these urban centers already possessed architectural magnificence that rivals and often surpasses what we build today. Multi-story buildings constructed from massive granite and marble blocks, each stone weighing several tons, fitted together with such precision that a blade cannot slip between them. Elaborate facades decorated with intricate carvings, classical columns, ornate cornices, and sculptural elements that required master craftsmen and years of skilled labor. Grand railway stations with soaring iron and glass roofs spanning hundreds of feet without internal supports. Water systems, sewage networks, gaslighting infrastructure, telegraph lines, all implemented on a city-wide scale within the span of just a few decades. But here is where the paradox deepens. While we see evidence of this extraordinary architectural and engineering capability, we are simultaneously told that the population of these cities was relatively small. Chicago, for instance, supposedly had fewer than 300,000 residents in 1870, yet the photographic record shows us a city of massive buildings, miles of developed streets, extensive port facilities, and industrial infrastructure that seems to require millions of hands to have constructed. The timeline itself becomes absurd when we calculate the labor required. If we accept the official population figures and account for children, the elderly, and those engaged in other occupations, we are left with an impossibly small workforce that somehow erected what amounts to an entire modern city in the span of 20 or 30 years. If you enjoy historical stories about the hidden mysteries of the past, please like this video and leave a comment with 1. If you don't, write 0. This helps us understand how valuable these narratives are to you. Now let us descend beneath these magnificent streets into the underground world that exists below. In city after city across America, there are stories, sometimes official records, sometimes only local legends, of extensive tunnel systems. Not the modern subway tunnels we know today, but older passages, often much larger, constructed with the same precision and quality as the buildings above. In Seattle, the famous underground city remains partially accessible to tourists, yet what they show represents only a fraction of the tunnels that exist. Local researchers have documented sealed passages leading off in all directions, some of them large enough to drive carriages through. In Portland, the Shanghai tunnels are acknowledged to exist, though the official explanation, that they were used for kidnapping sailors, seems almost deliberately absurd when one considers the architectural investment required to build such an extensive network. Chicago's tunnel system is perhaps the most documented yet simultaneously the most suppressed. Official records acknowledge a freight tunnel network constructed in the 1890s, yet photographs from the 1870s show tunnel entrances already existing, already sealed and abandoned. There are accounts from construction workers who, while excavating for modern building foundations, have broken into large brick-lined chambers and passageways that do not appear on any city maps. These discoveries are invariably sealed, filled with concrete, and removed from discussion. Why? Boston's tunnel system connects to one of the most intriguing aspects of this mystery, the question of street level changes. In city after city, we find evidence that the current street level is significantly higher than the original ground level. Buildings that now appear to be single-story structures were originally 2 or 3 stories tall, with their lower floors now buried beneath accumulated fill. In some cases, entire first floors have become basements. The official explanation is that cities deliberately raised their street levels, sometimes by as much as 10 or 15 feet, to improve drainage and sanitation. But when we examine this claim carefully, it begins to unravel. Consider the logistics of such an operation. To raise the street level of an entire city requires bringing in millions of tons of fill material. It means that every building must either be raised, an extraordinarily difficult engineering feat, or have its lower floors abandoned and filled in. It means that all existing infrastructure, water pipes, gas lines, sewer systems, must be rebuilt at the new higher level. The disruption to daily life would be total and would continue for years. Yet we are told that cities accomplished this massive transformation while simultaneously experiencing rapid growth, continued construction, and normal commerce. The timeline once again does not hold together, but there is another possibility, one that the evidence increasingly supports. What if the lower levels of these cities were not deliberately buried by human effort? What if instead these cities experienced a catastrophic event, or series of events, that resulted in massive deposits of mud, ash, and debris that buried the lower portions of buildings and filled the tunnel systems? What if the raising of street level was not an engineering project but an aftermath operation, an attempt to rebuild on top of destruction? Photographs from the late 1800s show something peculiar in city after city. In images of construction sites, excavations, and street repairs, we see layers of debris, burned timbers, and compressed material that look less like intentional fill and more like the aftermath of disaster. In some photographs, partially buried buildings appear to have been abandoned in haste, their windows still intact, their doors still in place, simply overtaken by deposits of earth and material. The tunnel systems themselves show signs of catastrophic abandonment. When urban explorers manage to access sealed sections, always at risk of criminal trespass charges, they report finding passages filled with hardened mud and debris, sometimes containing artifacts that suggest sudden abandonment. Tools left in place, lanterns still hanging on hooks, even in a few documented cases, skeletal remains. These are not tunnels that were carefully decommissioned and sealed for rational infrastructure reasons. These are passages that were overwhelmed, buried, and later sealed to hide evidence of what had happened. Consider the timing. In city after city, the major street-raising projects occurred in the 1860s, 70s, and 80s. In Chicago, the most extensive work happened after the Great Fire of 1871, which we are told destroyed much of the city. But here is the paradox. Photographs taken shortly after the fire show vast areas of destruction, yet the buildings that remain standing and the ruins themselves show signs of catastrophic damage that is inconsistent with a normal urban fire. Granite blocks cracked from intense heat, metal girders twisted and melted, yet wooden structures nearby somehow survived. The pattern of destruction suggests something far more devastating than a fire that supposedly started in a barn and spread through the city. What if the Great Chicago Fire was not the cause, but the effect? What if it was part of a larger catastrophe? 1871 was not an isolated year of disaster. That same year saw massive fires in Peshtigo, Wisconsin, where entire towns were incinerated with such intensity that people who fled into rivers and lakes were boiled alive. The official death toll exceeded 1,000, but local accounts suggest it was far higher. Entire communities simply vanished. That same autumn saw devastating fires in Michigan, Holland, and Manistee, fires so intense and widespread that the sky turned dark for days, and ash fell like snow across multiple states. These were not normal fires. Survivors described walls of flame that moved faster than horses could run, that generated their own winds, that ignited everything simultaneously rather than spreading gradually from building to building. They described a sky that turned strange colors, orange, red, green, before the fires struck. Some accounts mention earthquakes immediately preceding the fires. Others describe sounds like thunder or artillery, though the skies were clear. The official explanation blames dry conditions and strong winds, but this cannot account for the scale, intensity, and simultaneity of these conflagrations. Multiple cities across multiple states, separated by hundreds of miles, all experiencing catastrophic fires within days of each other, all exhibiting the same unusual characteristics, all leaving behind patterns of destruction that include melted stone and metal. Now consider another layer of strangeness. In the decades immediately following these fires and the supposed street-raising projects, there was a massive influx of orphans into American cities. Orphan trains carried tens of thousands, some estimates say as many as 200,000, children from eastern cities to be distributed to families in the Midwest and West. The official story is that these were children of poor immigrant families or victims of urban poverty and disease. But the photographs tell a different story. These children are well-dressed, well-groomed, often formally posed in studio photographs. They do not look like street urchins or children from desperate poverty. They look like children of middle-class or even wealthy families who have somehow lost their parents. What happened to the parents? Disease and poverty are the standard answers, but they cannot account for the scale. We are talking about tens of thousands of children, all orphaned within a relatively short period, in cities that supposedly had small populations to begin with. The mathematics do not work unless we are looking at the aftermath of a massive loss of adult population, a catastrophe that killed parents while leaving children alive, that devastated cities while creating a generation of orphans who needed to be redistributed across the continent. The tunnel systems tie into this mystery in ways that only deepen the questions. In multiple cities, there are persistent accounts, often dismissed as urban legend, of large underground chambers that contained living spaces, furniture, personal effects, and even the remains of people who had taken shelter there. These accounts typically emerge from construction workers or utility crews who break into sealed sections and before they can be properly documented are ordered to reseal the spaces and speak to no one about what they found. Were people living in these tunnels? If so, why? The conventional explanation when such spaces are acknowledged at all is that they were storage areas or basements, but the furnishings and layout suggest otherwise. They suggest inhabited spaces, places where people lived, worked, and gathered. They suggest a population that had reasons to spend significant time underground, either because the surface was uninhabitable or because the underground offered advantages that the surface did not. The technology required to build these tunnel systems exceeds what we are told was available in the mid-19th century. The precision of the brickwork, the engineering of the ventilation systems, the scale of the construction, all of it suggests capabilities that do not match the official timeline of technological development. Some of the older tunnel sections show construction techniques that we would struggle to replicate today. Perfectly cut stone, fitted without mortar, creating chambers and passages that have remained stable for more than a century and a half despite being buried under modern cities. There is another pattern that emerges when we examine cities across America and compare them to cities in Europe and other parts of the world. In the 1860s and 70s, multiple cities experienced devastating fires, floods, and earthquakes that resulted in massive reconstruction efforts, and often the burial of lower street levels. London raised portions of its street level, Paris reconstructed entire neighborhoods, Constantinople, Rome, St. Petersburg, city after city shows evidence of similar transformations during this same narrow window of time. This is not a coincidence. What kind of global event could cause such widespread urban catastrophe? What kind of disaster could strike cities on multiple continents, separated by thousands of miles of ocean, all within the span of a few decades? The official history treats each city's disaster as an isolated local event, a fire here, a flood there, an earthquake somewhere else. But when we step back and look at the global pattern, we see something much larger, something that suggests a worldwide crisis that fundamentally altered human civilization. Could there have been a global cataclysm, perhaps multiple events occurring in sequence, that devastated civilization on a worldwide scale? Could the 19th century that we think we know be actually a period of recovery, a desperate attempt by survivors to rebuild on the ruins of something far more advanced? This would explain the paradoxes we observe, the magnificent architecture built supposedly by small populations, the advanced engineering that appears suddenly without developmental progression, the massive numbers of orphans, the sealed tunnels filled with evidence of catastrophic abandonment, and the worldwide pattern of urban reconstruction that peaks in the same narrow time frame. The photographic record provides tantalizing glimpses of this possibility. Early photographs of American cities, those taken in the 1850s and 60s, often show buildings that appear ancient, weathered, and damaged, standing amid scenes of ongoing reconstruction. These are not new buildings under construction. They are old buildings being repaired, cleaned, and put back into service. In some images, we can see work crews clearing debris from structures that appear to have been partially buried, excavating doorways and windows that had been covered with earth and mud. The sealed tunnels of American cities are more than just abandoned infrastructure. They are physical evidence of a truth that has been suppressed, that our civilization is younger than we think, built on the ruins of something older, and that the gap between our technological capability and the capability of our recent ancestors is far smaller, or possibly reversed, than we have been taught to believe. The tunnels speak of a population that built extensively underground, that had reasons to create subterranean cities, that possessed engineering knowledge we struggle to match today. Their ceiling speaks of catastrophe, of sudden abandonment, of the need to hide what happened. When we walk the streets of our cities today, we walk on top of another world, a buried world that once teemed with life, purpose, and activity. That world was not gradually replaced by something better. It was catastrophically destroyed, covered over, and deliberately forgotten. The magnificent buildings that remain above ground are fragments of something much larger, survivors of a devastation that we are not supposed to remember. And in the sealed darkness below, in spaces filled with concrete and marked with prohibitions, lies evidence that our entire understanding of recent history is a carefully maintained fiction. The suppression of this possibility is so complete, so systematic, that it can only be intentional. Whenever archaeological evidence emerges that suggests greater age or different origins for American structures, it is quickly explained away, buried in technical journals, or simply ignored by mainstream academic institutions. Research into old tunnel systems is actively discouraged, often through legal mechanisms that make it trespass or illegal entry to explore these spaces. Maps showing the extent of underground networks have been removed from public archives or remain classified. Photographs that might provide evidence of older construction or catastrophic damage have been systematically excluded from official historical collections. The pattern is too consistent across too many cities and too many institutions to be mere coincidence or bureaucratic indifference. Someone, somewhere made a decision that certain truths about our recent past must remain hidden, and that decision has been enforced with remarkable efficiency for more than a century. Why would anyone engage in such systematic suppression? What purpose does it serve to maintain a false narrative of history? The answer may lie in control. A population that believes it is part of a young, ascending civilization, one that is constantly progressing, constantly improving, is far easier to manage than a population that understands itself to be living in the ruins of something far greater, that knows it has experienced catastrophic loss and civilizational collapse. The 19th and 20th centuries were periods of enormous social engineering, of establishment of new power structures, of creation of systems of control that persist to this day. These systems required populations that believed in progress, in the inevitability of improvement, in the authority of institutions. Revelation that civilization had recently collapsed, that current institutions were not the culmination of steady advancement but desperate reconstruction efforts by survivors, would undermine this entire ideological framework. If people understood that we are living in a post-catastrophe world, that our ancestors possessed capabilities we have lost, that progress is not inevitable but fragile and reversible, the foundations of modern political and social organization would crumble. The indigenous peoples of North America preserve oral traditions that speak of previous civilizations, of peoples who came before, of great cities that were destroyed in catastrophes. These accounts are usually dismissed as mythology or misinterpretation, but what if they are historical memory? What if the Native American populations witnessed the collapse of a previous high civilization and preserved the memory of it in their traditions? Some tribes speak of white-skinned peoples who lived in great cities before a time of darkness and destruction. Others describe epochs of civilization that rose and fell before the current age. These accounts have parallels in the mythologies and traditions of indigenous peoples around the world, all describing similar patterns of advanced civilizations that were destroyed by global catastrophes. Perhaps these stories are not myths at all, but fragmentary memories of events that occurred within the last 2 centuries, events that have been systematically erased from official history. The oral traditions speak of a world that ended in fire and darkness, of survivors emerging to find their cities buried and their knowledge lost. They speak of a great forgetting, a deliberate erasure of memory carried out by those who sought to build a new order on the ashes of the old. The authorities who maintain the seals, who classify the discoveries, who discourage investigation into these spaces, they know something that the general population does not. They know that beneath our feet lies proof of catastrophic civilizational collapse, of lost populations, of technological regression, and of historical discontinuity. They know that the tunnels, if fully explored and honestly documented, would force a complete revision of modern history and would reveal that we are not the masters of an ascending civilization, but the descendants of survivors, living in a world we did not build and barely understand. The sealed tunnels are not just physical barriers, they are epistemological barriers, walls built to separate us from knowledge that would fundamentally alter our understanding of who we are and where we came from. Every sealed entrance, every concrete-filled passage, every classified map represents a conscious decision to maintain ignorance, to preserve a carefully constructed narrative that serves the interests of those in power. The question we must ask ourselves is, what happens when that narrative can no longer be maintained? What happens when enough people begin to notice the inconsistencies, the impossibilities, the evidence that refuses to stay buried no matter how much concrete is poured over it? This is why the tunnels remain sealed, not because they are dangerous in any physical sense, many of them are structurally sound, built to last centuries, but because they are dangerous to the narrative, dangerous to the structures of power and belief that depend on that narrative. The truth beneath our cities is literally concreted over, buried under the weight of official denials and institutional indifference. But the evidence remains, waiting in the darkness, preserved in brick and stone, and the peculiar silence that surrounds any serious inquiry into what lies below. And perhaps one day, when enough people begin asking the right questions, those seals will be broken, those tunnels will be explored, and the true history of our recent past will finally emerge into the light, revealing a story far stranger and more tragic than anything we have been taught to believe. The walls are already cracking, the concrete is already failing, and beneath our feet, in the darkness that has been deliberately maintained for generations, the truth waits to be rediscovered. The only question that remains is whether we have the courage to face it. This has been Arcanem. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the hidden depths of history. Until next time, keep questioning, keep searching, and never stop looking beneath the surface of what you have been told is true.